Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie My Fault, London, 2025, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. There are cities that hum with secrets, and then there's London, the kind of place where every fog-drenched alley, every raindrop on cobblestone, feels like it's hiding something. In My Fault, London, the second chapter in a saga born from fire, tension, and unspoken words, that city becomes more than a setting. It becomes a battleground, a whispering labyrinth, a mirror held up to characters who thought they'd escaped their past but find themselves more entangled than ever. This isn't just a sequel, it's a reckoning. And if you thought the storm had passed in the first film, London makes it clear. The sky was only just beginning to darken. Returning at the core of the storm are Noah and Nick. Once thrown together by circumstance, step-siblings tangled in forbidden chemistry, bruised hearts stitched together by adrenaline and ache, they are now navigating something far more perilous than a complicated home life. Distance, change, temptation, and the haunting truth that love forged in chaos is never promised safety. From the moment the screen comes to life, the tone is different. Gone is the sun-drenched heat of the previous chapter. In its place, neon-lit streets slick with rain, car engines revving beneath bridges, nightclubs pulsing like hearts on the edge of rupture. The film wastes no time in plunging you back into their world, but this time it's colder, sharper, more dangerous. Because while Noah may have thought she was free, while Nick may have believed he could protect her, London has its own rules. And it doesn't care how deep your love runs. In the opening scenes, Noah is trying to find her footing in this new city. New home. New rhythm. But from the start, something feels off. There's a distance in Nick's eyes. A tension beneath the surface. She brushes it off, tells herself she's just imagining it, but you feel it too. The way the camera lingers on his silences. The way the music dips when she looks away. You start to suspect what she doesn't want to admit, that even the strongest bond can fracture under pressure. What My Fault, London does brilliantly is pull you into that unease. You're not watching drama unfold, you're living it. The editing is tighter, the score more atmospheric, and every interaction carries a sharpness that wasn't there before. As new characters emerge, Londoners with secrets, rivals with teeth, you start to see the cracks widening. Enter Claire, a figure draped in mystery and magnetism, with connections to Nick's past that Noah can't ignore. She's not the villain, not exactly, but she knows things. About Nick. About his past. About what he was before Noah came into his life and made him believe he could be something else. And then there's Jesse. The wild card. A street racer with a grin like a switchblade and eyes that always seem to know too much. He pulls Noah into a new world. Fast cars, faster decisions, and dangerous games with even more dangerous people. He's charming. Reckless. And when he starts circling too close, you begin to wonder. Is he just another threat, or is he the person who sees Noah more clearly than anyone else? The film juggles these tensions with precision. The romance isn't a simple arc, it's a storm. One moment, Nick and Noah are tangled together in alleyway shadows, their love a language spoken without words. The next, they're strangers standing on opposite sides of a truth neither wants to confront. Because while the first film was about discovery, London is about doubt. Can you really outrun your past? Can love survive the weight of secrets that refuse to stay buried? The cinematography plays into this emotional weight masterfully. London isn't shot as a postcard city, it's shot like a memory. Blurred lights. Crowded train stations. Quiet rooftops where whispers echo louder than screams. Each scene feels like it's wrapped in tension. A breath held too long. And when things do explode, when fists fly, when truths unravel, when tears fall, they hit like thunder. But there's still beauty here. In the quiet moments. The stolen ones. Like when Noah and Nick find themselves in an abandoned parking garage, alone, after another night gone wrong. The city humming outside. The air thick with everything they can't say. And instead of speaking, they sit in silence, shoulders touching. A fragile peace, however brief. It's in these moments that My Fault, London transcends the genre. It's not just about forbidden romance. It's about survival. Healing. The spaces between people where trust either lives or dies. As the plot twists tighten their grip, a new threat emerges, one that reaches back into Nick's past and forces him into choices he thought he'd never face again. Loyalties are tested. Allegiances shift. And in one pivotal scene, a chase through the rain-slicked streets of East London, you feel the tension not just in the movement, but in the silence that follows. Because the real danger isn't always the people chasing you. Sometimes it's the person you're running with. Without spoiling the major reveals, let's just say this: the film doesn't pull its punches. There are betrayals that sting, revelations that shatter, and a final act that leaves you reeling. One moment in particular, when Noah discovers something that changes the way she sees everything, including herself, is performed with such raw vulnerability that it feels more like a confession than a scene. It doesn't just change the story. It changes her. And Nick's not the same boy we met before. His edges are sharper. His guilt, deeper. But his love for Noah, however messy, however flawed, is still the thread that holds everything together. The film makes you question whether that's enough. Whether love alone can survive the weight of reality. By the time the credits roll, you're left with more than resolution. You're left with questions. The kind that don't fade when the screen goes black. Because My Fault, London isn't about tying up loose ends. It's about the cost of love. The price of truth. And whether, in the end, choosing each other is worth everything that choosing each other breaks. There are hints, too, of where the story might go next. A lingering shot on a certain character. A whispered phone call. A look past between enemies that promises this war is far from over. If London is a storm, what comes next might be the flood. But for now, we sit in the aftermath. Hearts bruised. Trust shaken. But a fire still burning, however faint. Because love, as this film reminds us, is never neat. It's fierce, messy, dangerous. And in a city like London, where every secret finds its voice, it's only a matter of time before the past comes knocking again. So stay close. Watch carefully. Because My Fault, London doesn't just tell a story, it invites you into it. And the next chapter? It's already breathing. London doesn't sleep. Not really. Its nights are too alive, too full of movement. Taxis whisper across damp streets, neon signs flicker in rhythm with bass lines, and somewhere beyond the fog, engines roar like ghosts with unfinished business. It's in this pulse that My Fault, London begins, not with a bang, but with a breath. A slow return. A re-entry into a world we thought we left behind, only to realize the real story was just beginning. Noah steps off the plane and into a city that feels like a question. It's not the warmth she left behind, not the chaos of LA's golden fire. It's cooler, quieter, more dangerous in its restraint. Her eyes scan the skyline as if searching for something familiar, something stable. But stability, she's about to learn, is a luxury London doesn't offer. Not when you're carrying as many secrets as she is. Not when love is a wound still healing, and maybe still bleeding. Nick is already there, waiting at arrivals with that unreadable expression he's perfected. His jaw tight, his eyes guarded. It should be a reunion. A moment of warmth. But there's distance. Something new in the air between them. They kiss, but it's brief. Almost practiced. Like they're both trying to convince themselves that what they're doing is still real. That it still works outside of the cocoon they built back home. They drive through the city in silence. Not total silence. There's music playing, something low and rhythmic, but the silence between them is louder. London moves outside the windows in fast blurs, lit-up bridges, nightclubs pulsing, storefronts shuttering for the evening. But inside the car, it's cold. Nick's hand doesn't reach for hers. Noah doesn't ask why. Instead, she looks out and sees the city for what it is, a new chapter she didn't ask to write. A place with its own ghosts, its own dangers. The first day's blur. Noah tries to adjust. New apartment, new streets, new names. Nick is often gone, wrapped up in business he won't explain. Meetings. Phone calls. Vague mentions of past connections he swears are nothing to worry about. But she does worry. Because he's changing. Not all at once, but in flickers. He's harder. Colder. She hears him on the phone one night, speaking in a voice she doesn't recognize. When he catches her listening, he brushes it off, but the damage is done. The seed is planted. She spends more time alone. Which is how she meets Jesse. It's late. She's wandering near the Thames, drawn by the sound of street racing engines echoing under the Southwark Bridge. A small crowd has gathered, laughing, smoking, alive in a way that feels foreign but thrilling. And then he's there, leaning against a bike, smiling like he knows exactly what she's running from. Jesse doesn't try to impress. He just listens. And when he offers her a ride, she doesn't say no. The ride is fast, reckless, exhilarating. A blur of wind and city lights. And for a moment, Noah feels like herself again. Not the girl in love, not the girl caught between families and futures, but just a girl in motion, with nothing holding her down. She laughs when they stop. Jesse grins. But before anything can bloom, she steps back. She remembers. Nick. Still, Jesse lingers. At home, things grow stranger. Nick comes home later. He's restless, distracted, always checking his phone. One night, Noah finds a locked drawer in his office. She doesn't open it, but the fact that it's locked is enough. Their conversations start to fracture. She asks questions. He avoids answers. When she accuses him of hiding something, he flinches, not in guilt, but in defense. "I'm protecting you," he says. But the look in his eyes says something else. "I don't know how to let you in." And then there's Claire. She appears at a gallery opening, where Nick takes Noah as an apology. Claire is stunning. Dark hair, red lips, a voice like velvet wrapped in danger. She approaches them like an old friend, but her eyes settle on Nick too long. Too knowingly. She smiles at Noah, says all the right things, but the tension is undeniable. Later, Nick admits they knew each other back then. Just casually. Nothing serious. Noah doesn't believe him. And it's not just jealousy, it's intuition. Because Claire's not just someone from the past. She's someone who knows who Nick was before Noah. Before they ran. Before they tried to start over. And when Claire starts showing up more, at events, at clubs, even once outside Noah's building, it becomes clear that she's not here to reconnect. She's here to disrupt. Noah's dreams grow restless. She sees images she doesn't understand. A car in the rain. A phone left ringing. Nick's voice shouting in the distance. Something is building, something the film refuses to name too soon. But it lingers, just out of reach, in every close-up, every lingering look. When Noah returns to the street races, she doesn't know why. Maybe it's the thrill. Maybe it's Jesse. Maybe it's just the hunger to feel something real. Jesse is there, of course. Waiting. He tells her things about London Nick never would. The politics of its underground. The danger of old alliances. He doesn't mention Nick by name, but the implication is clear. Her boyfriend has history here. Dangerous history. Back at home, Noah finally opens the drawer. Inside, there's a folder. Photos. Documents. Surveillance images. One is of Jessie, another of Claire, and one, crumpled at the bottom, of herself. She stares at it for what feels like hours. Why would Nick have this? What is he tracking? What does he know? She confronts him. The fight is brutal, not loud, but sharp. He doesn't deny the photos. But he won't explain them, either. He says only this: there are people here who would hurt you. I won't let them. She wants to believe him. But belief is a house she's not sure is still standing. Noah leaves. Just walks into the London night, not knowing where she's going. The camera follows her, not from ahead, but from behind, as if the city itself is watching her walk away. She finds herself at Jessie's garage. He doesn't ask questions. He just hands her a beer and lets her sit in silence. Eventually, they talk. About pasts. About masks. About how you can love someone and still not trust them. And as the sun starts to rise over the edge of the city, Noah closes her eyes. Something is coming. And she knows it has nothing to do with London. And everything to do with what they brought here. Morning arrives like a truth that can't be ignored. Grey light spills into London's narrow streets, and for Noah, nothing looks the same anymore. The skyline seems colder. The air heavier. Every sound feels too loud, every silence too quiet. The folder, the photographs, the proof of secrets long buried, still lingers in her mind like a bruise she can't stop pressing. She's left Nick behind, but not the gravity of everything they share. It still pulls at her, even now, even as she stands on someone else's threshold. And Jessie, calm as always, offers no pressure, just presence. But presence, as she's beginning to learn, is sometimes more dangerous than absence. Jessie has more to say now. He's held back before, out of respect, or maybe strategy, but with Noah sitting across from him in the echo of fluorescent-lit stillness, the gloves come off. He tells her what Nick used to be, what he used to run. Before her. Before they crossed that invisible line from step-siblings to soulmates. Before London. Nick wasn't just part of the underground scene. He led it. Street racing, yes, but more than that. A fixer. A broker. Someone who made things happen behind the curtain and got out clean. Or at least he thought he did. Until someone got hurt. Jessie doesn't say who, not yet, but his eyes harden as he tells the story. He left, Jessie says. But London never forgets. The words sink like stones. Noah doesn't cry. She just listens, jaw tight, breath shallow, fists clenched around the edge of Jessie's workbench. It makes sense now. The late nights, the drawer full of surveillance, the way Nick's protectiveness always felt like fear in disguise. But she still doesn't know the whole picture. Not until Claire reappears. This time, she comes to Noah directly. Outside a small cafe in Shoreditch, as if they'd planned it. She sits across from Noah without asking, dressed like the kind of storm you don't see coming. Elegant, composed, but with eyes that slice through you. Claire doesn't waste time. Nick killed my brother, she says. There's no build-up, no hesitation. Just the weight of those words falling onto the table like shattered glass. Noah stares at her, not breathing. Claire tells her the story, a race gone wrong. A debt unpaid. A betrayal that led to a crash, one that left her brother in a coma for months, only to die weeks after waking up. Claire had waited, watched, and when Nick disappeared, she let him go. But now he's back. And she won't let the past rest. Noah walks away before she can cry. She finds Nick at their apartment, sitting in the dark like he's been waiting for this moment. The confrontation doesn't explode, it implodes. Quiet fury. Words like razors. She tells him what Claire said. He doesn't deny it. He says he didn't mean for anyone to die, that it was supposed to be a clean race, that the crash was an accident. But he took the money. He walked away. And that, he admits, was the real mistake. I was trying to survive, he says, voice hoarse. Until I met you, that's all I ever did. Noah can't look at him. Because now she has a choice. Stay, with all the damage, all the weight, all the history, or leave. But where does she even go? Who is she without him? And who is he if he's not the boy she fell in love with? Before she can decide, everything shatters. Claire moves first. That night, Jesse's garage is set on fire. Noah hears about it through a late-night call from him, voice panicked, coughing from the smoke. He's okay, but barely. The police write it off as gang-related. Jesse knows better. That was a message, he says. And it wasn't meant for me. Nick doesn't wait. He confronts Claire in public, at an underground club where everyone's watching, but no one dares to intervene. The scene is volatile. She calls him a murderer. He calls her a coward hiding behind revenge. And then she tells him she has something else, proof. That the crash wasn't just an accident. That someone paid him to throw it. And if Noah finds out that part, she'll leave for good. The balance tilts. Nick spirals. You see it in the way he moves. He stops answering texts. Stops sleeping. When Noah finds him again, he's alone in a bar, eyes dark, staring into nothing. He tells her he's going to fix it. End it. And she knows what that means. He's going back to the underground. One last time. Not for a race. For a reckoning. She begs him not to. He doesn't listen. The final act begins on a rooftop, under a bruised sky. Jesse shows up. Claire shows up. Even some of the old faces from Nick's past, shadowy figures in leather and smoke. It's not a fight. Not at first. It's a negotiation. But there are no clean deals anymore. Claire reveals the truth. The crash wasn't an accident. Nick had taken the money, but changed his mind at the last second. He tried to pull out. Tried to warn the others. But it was too late. The crash wasn't caused by speed. It was caused by sabotage. Someone tampered with the car. Someone working for the man who wanted Claire's brother dead. Someone Claire still works for. In that moment, the betrayal flips. Nick wasn't the executioner. He was the scapegoat. Claire had known the truth. But revenge is a kind of poison. It doesn't care about truth. It just wants to burn. And then it does. One of Claire's men pulls a gun. The rooftop erupts into chaos. Fists flying, gunshots echoing, Noah screaming Nick's name. Jesse grabs her, pulls her behind cover. Nick fights with a rage born of survival. And in the end, it's Claire who falls. Not dead, but broken. The truth exposed. Her revenge unfulfilled. The police arrive minutes later. Statements are taken. Lies are untangled. And Nick, bloody, bruised, turns to Noah with that same question in his eyes he had the day they first met. Are you still here? She is. But it's not simple. The final scenes are quiet. No big declarations. No dramatic soundtrack. Just Noah, packing a suitcase. Not to leave forever, but to breathe. To heal. She tells Nick she loves him. That she forgives him. But that forgiveness isn't a bridge, it's a door. One she needs to walk through alone for a while. Nick nods. He doesn't beg. He just watches as she steps into the morning light. The city doesn't pause for them. London keeps moving. But this time, the silence between them is full, not empty. It's not the end. It's the space where the next chapter begins. In the shadows between heartbreak and healing, in the silence that lingers after a slammed door or a whispered apology, the characters of My Fault, London begin to take their true shape. This isn't a story defined by good and bad, by hero and villain. It's a labyrinth of emotion, where love cuts as deep as betrayal and survival sometimes looks a lot like silence. These characters don't announce who they are. They unfold, moment by aching moment, mistake by mistake. And when you really see them, not just what they say, but what they carry, you realize this isn't a romance. It's a reckoning. Noah stands at the center of this unraveling storm. She is the lens through which we see the city, the chaos, the people who orbit around her with want and regret stitched into every look. In the beginning, she's in motion, fleeing the familiarity of her old world, stepping into the unknown of London with a suitcase full of questions and a heart still bruised from the weight of forbidden love. But this time, she's different. More cautious. Wiser. There's no wide-eyed wonder in her anymore. She doesn't flinch when someone lies to her. She waits. Listens. Tracks every shift in tone. Noah has learned that love is not always the safest place to land. She's not broken, but she is still healing. And that tension plays out in every quiet moment. In the way she doesn't ask Nick where he's been. In the way she walks the city streets at night, searching for something unnamed. She wants to trust again, but trust is a door she's not sure she can open without falling straight through. And yet, she never loses her agency. Noah is never a victim. Even in her most vulnerable moments, she moves with intention. She's not passive. She's observing. Calculating. Growing. What makes Noah compelling isn't her strength, it's her honesty. Her willingness to sit with her confusion, to feel everything without shutting down. When Claire tells her the story of her brother, Noah doesn't react with blind loyalty. She listens. She doubts. She confronts Nick not to punish, but to understand. That's what sets her apart. She's not trying to be right. She's trying to know. And then there's Nick. Once the guarded boy with a sharp jaw and a shadowed past, he returns in this chapter harder, quieter, and more haunted than ever. But beneath the edges, there's still the flicker of the boy we first met, the one who loved fiercely and protected recklessly. The problem is, that boy is at war with the man he's become. London pulls the truth out of Nick like a confession. The city doesn't let him hide behind charm or mystery. It forces him to confront every lie he's told, to Noah, to himself. His love for Noah is never in question. That much is clear in every panicked glance, every silent plea for forgiveness. But love isn't enough. Not when the ghosts he's tried to outrun have finally caught up. His past isn't a distant memory. It's here, breathing down his neck. And it threatens to destroy not just his future, but the one thing he's ever truly fought for, her. There's something deeply tragic about Nick in this story. He doesn't defend himself when the truth comes out. He doesn't lie his way free. He just stands there, soaked in rain and guilt, and says, "I tried." Because he did. He tried to change. To build something clean on ground still soaked with the sins of who he used to be. And in that moment, when he admits he took the money, when he tells Noah he ran instead of owning up, we don't hate him. We ache for him. Because we've all tried to run from the versions of ourselves we'd rather forget. Jesse enters like smoke through a crack in the wall. Hard to pin down, impossible to ignore. He's not a distraction. Not really. He's a mirror. Someone who doesn't ask Noah to forget, or forgive, or explain. He just listens. Jesse is chaos wrapped in calm. He's lived in this world longer than she has, and he's learned how to survive it without losing his soul. But what makes Jesse dangerous isn't his flirtation, it's his clarity. He sees Nick for who he was. He sees Noah for who she's becoming. And he doesn't lie about either. Their connection is never framed as temptation. It's about timing. Jesse arrives when Noah needs something unfiltered. Someone who doesn't carry the weight of everything she's been through. But Jesse's not a romantic foil. He's a truth-teller. And in a story built on lies, that makes him both a threat and a gift. He forces Noah to face things she might have buried. And when he backs off, when he lets her go, it's with a grace that speaks volumes. He's not there to replace Nick. He's there to remind her who she is without him. And then there's Claire. Every story like this needs a character who doesn't blink. Claire is rage sculpted into elegance. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Her presence is enough to change the temperature of a room. But Claire isn't a villain, not in the way we expect. Her motives are born from grief, not greed. Her brother died. She blamed Nick. And while the details are murky, the loss is real. Her pain is sharp and undigested. And like many who grieve without closure, she turns it outward. She plots. She follows. She waits for her moment to strike. But what makes Claire fascinating isn't her vengeance, it's the cracks in it. When she finally speaks the truth, about who paid Nick, about what really happened, she does it not with power, but with exhaustion. Her revenge has already cost her everything. And in that reveal, we see the core of the story. Everyone here is bleeding. Everyone is just trying to make sense of the pieces they've been handed. Claire becomes less an antagonist and more a tragic figure, a woman who held onto her rage so tightly that it became her only identity. The supporting players, too, have their weight. Jesse's crew, Claire's contacts, even the silent figures who move through London's underground, they each represent fragments of a world built on loyalty and fear. But they're not caricatures. They're people shaped by survival. People who know that in cities like this, love is a currency and secrets are more valuable than gold. But the most important character in this film, the one that binds them all together, is the city itself. London is never just a backdrop. It's a participant. It reflects every emotional beat. Rain when tension rises, neon glow when temptation looms, fog when clarity slips away. The alleyways aren't just settings. They're metaphors. You can get lost in them. Or find yourself. Depending on which turn you take. By the end of the story, no character is the same. Noah walks away, not from love, but from dependency. She doesn't leave Nick because she's angry. She leaves because she needs to remember herself. And that's the most powerful arc of all. Choosing space not as rejection, but as reclamation. Nick stays behind, not as a broken man, but as someone ready to rebuild. Not just his life, but his soul. Jesse disappears into the city, the way people like him always do. Not because he's forgotten, but because his role was never to stay. It was to ignite. And Claire? She's left in the ruins of her own war. Not defeated. Just finally, painfully human. My fault. London isn't about who ends up with who. It's about who we become when everything else is stripped away. About the lies we tell to survive. And the truths we whisper when no one's watching. These characters don't exist in extremes. They live in the middle. In the gray. And it's in that gray space, raw, flawed, and beautifully real, that they become unforgettable. There are films that unfold cleanly, moving from script to screen like a well-rehearsed waltz. And then there are films like My Fault, London, the kind that don't just get made, they happen, like lightning cracking through an overcast sky. Beneath the polished final cut, behind the high-stakes romance and the rain-slicked London skyline, lies a strange and twisting trail of unexpected events, eerie coincidences, and creative gambles that somehow became part of the film's pulse. Ask anyone on set, and they'll tell you, this wasn't a production, it was a storm. A beautiful, chaotic storm. It started even before the cameras rolled. In pre-production, the original plan was to shoot the majority of the film in Berlin. London, with its unpredictable weather and tighter permit requirements, was deemed too risky. But something happened. According to a producer's late-night post, the director walked through Shoreditch one rainy evening, scouting locations out of curiosity. The next day, he scrapped the Berlin plan. The city spoke to us, he said. London had the story already living inside it. That intuitive choice changed everything. From there, the production seemed to drift into the realm of the uncanny. Take, for instance, the rain. London is notorious for its gloom, but during filming, it became almost cinematically perfect. Rain would fall minutes before a key scene, then stop the moment the director called action. One of the most emotionally heavy rooftop confrontations, the moment where truths crashed down like thunder, was scheduled for a clear day. A sudden storm delayed the crew for hours. But when it passed, it left behind a low-hanging mist and a pale gray sky that made the entire city feel suspended in breath. They shot the scene in one take. It became the centerpiece of the film's trailer. And then there was the garage fire. In the script, Jesse's garage was supposed to be vandalized, a symbolic moment, a quiet threat. But the night before that scene was to be filmed, an electrical short in one of the on-set lights caused a real fire. No one was hurt, but the damage was real. Blackened walls, scorched equipment, the unmistakable scent of smoke lingering long after. Instead of rebuilding, the director decided to incorporate the aftermath into the story. What was meant to be a threat became a warning. The destruction felt too real to ignore. It made it into the film unchanged, with a line added later, "Sometimes fire doesn't need a reason." There were smaller, stranger incidents, too. The actress playing Claire reportedly stayed in character between takes, rarely speaking to the cast outside of rehearsals. It made it into the film unchanged, with a line added later, "Sometimes fire doesn't need a reason." There were smaller, stranger incidents, too. The actress playing Claire reportedly stayed in character between takes, rarely speaking to the cast outside of rehearsals. On set, she was elegant, cold, always dressed in shadowy tones, even when the cameras weren't rolling. One day, she stood perfectly still in a darkened corridor of the set for so long that a crew member screamed thinking she was a mannequin left behind. Her explanation? Claire wouldn't sit. She's always waiting. And L. Diaz, who played Noah, had recurring dreams throughout filming. The same one. She was walking barefoot through a deserted version of London. No people, no traffic. Just fog. And footsteps behind her. She told the costume designer about it one morning, and to her surprise, several crew members admitted they'd had eerily similar dreams. The director, leaning into the eerie vibe, began using fog machines more liberally, especially in scenes where Noah is alone. "Sometimes dreams are direction," he said with a grin. But perhaps the strangest phenomenon was the lost scene. During post-production, a sequence was discovered on one of the digital drives, a nighttime shoot that no one remembered filming. The footage showed Noah walking alone through a train station, looking directly into the camera. She says a line that wasn't in the script, "You can't outrun the ending if it started with you." There was no slate, no scheduled scene like it on the call sheet, and Elle had no memory of filming it. The scene, raw and haunting, ended up being used as a visual echo during the credits. To this day, no one knows who filmed it. There were also technical oddities. Cameras that recorded audio glitches only during scenes between Claire and Nick. Nothing dramatic, just a faint crackle. A distortion. The sound tech even joked, "It's like the tension is breaking the mic." No logical explanation was found. The equipment was fine. Batteries were new. But the interference persisted until post-production sound had to digitally clean every interaction between those two characters. It wasn't all spooky, though. Some of it was just unexpected. The car that Jesse uses in the film, a sleek black motorcycle that appears in several chase sequences, broke down halfway through a night shoot. Production was losing hours fast. A local bystander, watching from a rooftop above the set, called down and offered his own bike for the scene. "It's got soul," he said. And he was right. The stand-in bike, older and rougher, gave Jesse's scenes a new grit. The crew loved it so much they wrote in a line about it. "That man, never seen again." No one even got his name. Then there was the deleted kiss. Originally, the script called for one final kiss between Noah and Jessie, an ambiguous moment, more emotional than romantic. It was filmed, and it was good. But during editing, the director chose to remove it. It said too much, he later explained. This story isn't about choosing between lovers. It's about choosing yourself. The decision sparked heated debates in test screenings, but ultimately, most agreed. The silence between them in the final scene said more than any kiss ever could. Food on set was another recurring joke among the cast. London catering is famously hit or miss, and the cast began ordering from a nearby cafe during night shoots. That cafe, a tiny corner shop run by an elderly couple, became something of a sanctuary. Cast and crew would crowd in between scenes, still in costume. One night, L. Diaz sat down in full wardrobe and recited lines to the chef. He had no idea she was an actor. "I thought she was just very dramatic," he said. They later filmed a bonus scene there as a thank you, which was released exclusively online. And if you're wondering about the city itself, yes, London noticed. Multiple street scenes were filmed guerrilla-style, with minimal crew and handheld cameras. Real bystanders appear in several shots. In one, a woman recognizes Nick mid-shot and mouths, "I know you." They kept it. In another, a man walks between Noah and the lens during a long take and says, "Don't trust him." The line wasn't scripted, but the actor playing Nick turned and stared after him, perfectly in character. The moment stayed in the final cut. Audiences now debate whether the stranger was a plant or something else entirely. There were happy accidents, too. A scene meant to be set inside a car was rewritten on the fly when the vehicle's windows fogged beyond control. Instead of fighting it, the director asked the actors to use it. What followed was a moment where Noah drew a heart in the window, paused, and then wiped it away. Completely improvised. Raw. It became one of the most iconic shots of the film. Post-production was no less strange. The score, composed mostly using analog synths and real string recordings, accidentally included a sample of street noise from the original audio tracks. Instead of removing it, the composer looped it in. You can hear it, faintly, in the background of the film's final scene. A subtle hum. A distant horn. A reminder that the story doesn't end when the credits roll. It was this energy, this strange fusion of art and accident, that shaped My Fault, London into something more than a sequel. It became a living thing. A story that breathed on its own. A film haunted not by ghosts, but by the emotional gravity of the people who made it. Every delay, every glitch, every unexplained moment became part of the mythos. Because some films are built in studios. Others are born in the streets. And this one? It came from the fog. From the pulse of a city that never forgot what love sounds like when it's breaking. From a set that whispered when no one else was my fault. London wasn't supposed to be magic. And yet, it was. Some films arrive with quiet footsteps, slipping into the cinematic conversation with modest intentions. Small stories told with care. Others crash in, fists clenched, demanding to be felt. My Fault, London does neither. It doesn't ask for your attention. It just looks you in the eye and waits. And once it has you, it refuses to let go. Beneath its street-lit romance and adrenaline-drenched pacing, it tells a story so layered in emotional undercurrents that its most significant events don't shout, they echo. And the deeper you listen, the more you realize how intentional every twist, every silence, every act of betrayal truly was. From a critical lens, one of the film's earliest pivotal moments is also one of its quietest. Noah's arrival in London. On the surface, it plays out like a scene we've seen before. A young woman stepping off a plane, searching for familiarity in an unfamiliar place. But My Fault, London refuses to offer comfort. The cinematography is stark, the color palette colder than its predecessor, the framing tighter, more claustrophobic. The decision to present this arrival not with a warm embrace but with emotional distance between Noah and Nick sets the tone. It tells us this isn't a story about reconnection, it's a story about friction. Critics immediately latched onto this shift. What began in the previous film as an illicit, high-stakes love story here becomes a meditation on the aftermath. How do you sustain passion once the world no longer stands in your way? How do you survive the ghosts you bring with you when the chaos dies down? That's what makes the next major event, Noah's discovery of the locked drawer in Nick's office, so impactful. It's not about the drawer. It's about the instinct that makes her want to open it. Trust, once implicit, now has conditions. That drawer is more than a narrative device. It's a metaphor for everything Nick won't say. Everything he still hides. And when she finally opens it and finds the surveillance photos, Claire, Jesse, even herself, it's not the act of deception that devastates. It's the implication. He's still living in the shadows, even when he swore he left them behind. From a narrative standpoint, this moment turns the key on the entire plot. But from a critical perspective, it's something more. It's the beginning of Noah's emotional awakening. Her journey, which started with rebellion and raw chemistry, now becomes one of clarity. This isn't a girl running to someone anymore. It's a woman realizing she might have to walk away. The introduction of Jesse, too, is handled with rare precision. Critics praised the decision to frame him not as a romantic wedge but as an emotional mirror. He never tries to steal Noah. Instead, he listens. He becomes the character who asks questions no one else dares to. Questions about truth, about loyalty, about what it actually means to move on. And his presence complicates things not by creating drama, but by revealing that the drama already existed. That scene under the Southwark Bridge, where Noah rides with Jesse for the first time, is more than just a thrill ride. It's a visual symbol of release, of freedom, of what it means to feel weightless, even if just for a few minutes. The camera doesn't linger on Jesse's smirk. It stays on Noah's face, wind in her hair, eyes wide, not with danger, but with possibility. Critics were quick to highlight this as a turning point not because of who she's with, but because of what it unlocks in her, agency. But it's the rooftop confrontation between Nick and Claire that critics zeroed in on as the film's emotional axis. Not because of its explosiveness, though the scene is taut with tension, but because of what it reveals. This isn't a story about villains and victims. It's about grief and the different shapes it takes. Claire isn't evil. She's broken. Her brother is dead, and Nick, regardless of the truth, is part of that story. The fact that she waited, watched, and then struck at the exact moment when Nick was finally building something good again, that's not malice. That's mourning gone unchecked. And the film doesn't flinch from that. It lets her speak. It lets us sit with the uncomfortable truth that revenge can grow from pain, not power. That the need to make someone feel what you felt doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. The rooftop becomes not just the climax of the plot, but the moral reckoning of the film. Every character stands in their truth. Claire, who can't let go of the past. Nick, who can't outrun it. Noah, caught in the middle, realizing that the person she loves is no longer a mystery, but maybe he's not who she needs him to be. The aftermath of that confrontation could have easily been formulaic. Arrests. Exile. A clean ending. But the film does something more painful and more honest. It slows down. It breathes. And it lets Noah make the hardest choice of all, to walk away not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. Critics called this the bravest scene in the film. There are no raised voices. No grand declarations. Just a quiet moment in a half-packed room, Nick sitting on the edge of a bed that suddenly feels too small, and Noah standing at the door, holding both their past and their future in her hands. Her voice doesn't tremble. She says she loves him, that she forgives him. But she's leaving. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean staying. This decision resonated deeply. In a world of love stories that often equate drama with destiny, My Fault, London did something different. It told the truth, that love alone isn't always enough. That sometimes, the strongest love is the one that knows when to let go. Audience reception mirrored this emotional weight. Reviews praised the film's restraint, its refusal to resolve every tension, its willingness to let characters make hard, imperfect choices. The performances were called haunting, vulnerable, almost too real. But more than that, viewers talked about feeling seen. About how the film captured something rarely shown, the space between love and survival. The film's thematic resonance lies exactly there, in that space. In the recognition that relationships forged in fire sometimes need the quiet of distance to truly heal. That people who hurt us might still be the ones who love us most. And that healing isn't a cinematic arc. It's a choice. Made quietly. Again and again. My Fault, London doesn't end with a kiss or a reunion. It ends with a decision. Noah leaves. Not forever. But for now. And Nick doesn't chase her. He lets her go, not because he wants to, but because he finally understands that love isn't possession. It's permission. Critics called it the anti-romance romance. A film that dares to say, not all endings are tidy. Not all stories need closure. Sometimes, the most powerful love stories are the ones that don't finish in the way we expect, but in the way they must. That's why the film lingers. Why its events hit harder than car crashes or declarations. Because at its core, My Fault, London is about consequence. About how the past refuses to stay buried. How pain doesn't wait for permission. And how love, when it's real, doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it just watches someone walk away. And quietly lets them go. There's something inherently mysterious about a film like My Fault, London. Not just in its plot or the moody shadows of its aesthetic, but in the way it came together. Quietly at first, like a secret slipping through the cracks of an old city. You could feel it in the way the cast talked about it. In the way the crew described long, sleepless nights not as challenges, but as invitations. Making this film wasn't about spectacle. It was about immersion. About building a world that felt like memory. One you didn't just watch, but lived in. And behind that world was a production filled with oddities, improvisations, and moments that no one saw coming. The story begins with the script. Or rather, the second script. Though it's a sequel, My Fault, London didn't begin as one. The original draft was a standalone story, a gritty urban romance set in London's underground street scene, centered around two completely different characters. But as the first My Fault gained traction, particularly with younger audiences who latched onto its rawness and emotional volatility, the studio saw something rare, a chance to evolve a narrative organically. And so, the draft was rewritten, not scrapped, but carefully folded into the existing universe. London became not just a setting, but a proving ground for Noah and Nick. A place to test their bond in a world where nothing is handed to them easily. The transition was smoother than expected, mostly because the actors were already living their characters. Elle Diaz, who plays Noah, has talked in interviews about how she never fully left the character after the first film. She was always kind of walking next to me, she said. Especially in the year between films. I'd hear songs and think, Noah would love this, or she wouldn't say that. That kind of continuity meant that when filming began in London, Diaz didn't need to refine the role. She simply stepped back into it. The same was true for Thomas Roman, who plays Nick. But for him, the return was more complicated. He admitted that he approached the sequel with a sense of dread. I didn't know if I could go darker, he said. Nick ends the first film on the edge of redemption, and I was afraid of losing that. But then I read the script and realized this wasn't about losing him. It was about stripping him down. That stripping down became a production-wide philosophy. The director, Ana Rivas, pushed for minimalism in both performance and visual tone. "London's already loud," she told her cinematographer. "Let's make the silences scream." And that's exactly what they did. The film's signature stillness, those long, lingering moments of unspoken tension, were often unscripted. Scenes would run past the dialogue, the camera still rolling, letting the actors breathe. Those in-between moments? Most of them were real. One such moment came during the rooftop confrontation between Nick and Claire. The final take used in the film was completely different from what was rehearsed. The actors had memorized lines, blocked their movements, but just before rolling, Rivas pulled them aside and said, "Don't act. Just feel it." What followed was a raw, 6-minute take full of interruptions, overlaps, even a moment where Roman broke character and walked to the edge of the rooftop in silence. But it worked. The camera stayed steady. And when they called cut, no one spoke for nearly 30 seconds. Even the setting played a part in the storytelling. The production didn't rely on studio lots. Nearly 80% of the film was shot on location. Abandoned warehouses, working train stations, old apartment buildings converted into sets. The apartment Nick and Noah share wasn't a set at all. It was a real flat in East London, rented by the production team for 6 weeks. The crew slept in shifts, often napping between takes on the spare mattress in the hall. "It felt lived in," one assistant said. "Because it was lived in." That authenticity came with its challenges. London weather, always unpredictable, became both a blessing and a curse. One night, the crew prepared a rooftop scene under clear skies, only for a thick fog to roll in minutes before shooting. Rivas didn't see it as a problem. She reworked the lighting, shifted the angle, and filmed the entire scene in the haze. "It made everything feel heavier," she said. "Like the city itself was holding its breath." Another time, a scheduled car sequence was nearly ruined when the main vehicle refused to start. After an hour of rewiring and jump-start attempts, they switched to a backup. That backup car, slightly older, with scratches on the hood and mismatched headlights, ended up being used throughout the rest of the film. It added a realism the original car lacked. "It wasn't perfect," Roman said, "which made it exactly right for Nick." But the production wasn't all solemn poetry and grit. There were light moments. Real ones. Elle Diaz was known on set for bringing hot chocolate to the crew during night shoots. She'd disappear for 20 minutes, then reappear with trays full of mismatched mugs and thermoses. "She kept us warm," joked a grip. Literally and emotionally. Thomas Roman had a habit of falling asleep between takes. Anywhere. On crates. Against walls. Once, curled up in the back seat of a car mid-scene. The blooper reel reportedly contains several shots of him being gently nudged awake by the boom operator. And then there was Jesse, played by newcomer Rami Javed, who improvised nearly all of his dialogue. Originally written as a minor supporting character, Jesse's role expanded when the director noticed how naturally Javed played off Diaz. "He made her laugh," she said. And we realized Noah needed someone who could make her laugh again. His character, once planned as a 3-scene presence, became a central figure simply because of what Javed brought to the room. Ease, unpredictability, charm. There was also the phantom scene. Late in post-production, the editors found a take that none of them remembered filming. It showed Noah sitting in the empty apartment, whispering a line not in any version of the script, "I was here, and that should mean something." The lighting matched a sequence shot weeks earlier, but no one could recall her saying it. Diaz swears she doesn't remember delivering the line. The director insists it wasn't planned. But the moment was too beautiful to cut. They left it in, buried near the end of the film like an echo, a ghost of a girl who still hasn't left. Music, too, was crafted with an eye toward mood over melody. The score blends analog synths with real-world street recordings. Ambient city sounds, buses, footsteps, birdsong, were sampled and stretched into notes. Composer Arjun Cole recorded live violin in an abandoned tunnel, allowing the acoustics to bleed into the track. "You can hear the echo," he said. "It makes the sadness last longer." One track, used in the final scene as Noah walks away, was built entirely from the slowed-down sound of a turning key. Loop it, layer it, and suddenly you have a heartbeat. That's the kind of artistry that made its way into every layer of this film. Quiet choices. Unexpected ones. But the kind that make you feel something, even if you don't know why. On wrap day, no one wanted to go home. The final shot was filmed just as the sun rose over Tower Bridge. Nick standing at the window, watching the city wake up without her. No music. Just breath. It wasn't originally supposed to be the last scene, but when they watched it in the edit bay, everyone knew this was the ending. The silence. The goodbye without the fanfare. And so, the film finished the way it had been made, softly. With feeling. Not every movie invites its cast and crew to feel like family. Fewer still feel like secrets whispered to you in the dark. But My Fault, London was different. It wasn't a sequel. It was a confession. A second chapter that didn't try to outdo the first, but to deepen it. And the people who made it, through fog and fire, through sleepless nights and forgotten lines, knew that. Because when you make a film like this, you're not just telling a story. You're living in it for as long as the city lets you. There are cities that play host to stories, background players offering texture and light, and then there are cities that swallow the story whole, reshape it, echo it in every rain-slicked surface. My Fault, London never pretends its setting is incidental. It knows exactly what it's doing by placing its characters in the winding arteries of one of the world's most haunted, humming cities. London isn't just where the story unfolds. It is the story, at least the part that nobody wants to talk about out loud. From the very first frame, the city is introduced not with grandeur or warmth, but with restraint. The camera doesn't pan across a skyline or cue up a sweeping orchestral track. Instead, it follows Noah through the airport, through the tunnels of the underground, through narrow streets that seem to lean inward like secrets. We don't see London. We feel it. The claustrophobia. The chill. The beauty lurking beneath grime. It doesn't welcome her. It observes her. The choice to present the city this way isn't just stylistic. It's psychological. Every location in the film is mapped to the characters' emotional states. Nick and Noah's apartment, for example, is nestled in East London. Concrete, industrial, unglamorous. The building is old, the hallway lights flicker, and the windows are too small to let in much sunlight. But inside, it's filled with softness. Warm lamps, second-hand cushions, mismatched mugs. It feels like two people trying to build a home with their hands still shaking. A place caught between shelter and exile. The apartment itself becomes a character. It breathes with them. When things are good, it glows. When trust starts to fracture, so does the space. Scenes start framing them on opposite sides of the room. Their conversations begin with kitchen counters between them, then progress to closed doors, muffled through walls. The cinematography doesn't just show distance, it creates it. The camera begins to pull back slowly, subtly, until they feel like they're shrinking inside their own home. Outside the apartment, London stretches like a living memory. Jesse's world lives in Southwark, beneath bridges and beside riverbanks where streetlights reflect off the Thames like molten glass. His garage is tucked behind a row of warehouses, barely marked. It's grimy, cluttered, full of motion. But it's alive. And that contrast matters. Where Nick's world is all clean lines and hidden pasts, Jesse's is messy, open, unafraid. The setting isn't just where scenes happen, it defines how we understand each person. The street racing scenes, filmed mostly in the East End, under overpasses and in construction zones, are pulsing with energy, but never romanticized. There's no fast and furious polish here. The cinematography leans into the darkness, Using handheld shots, lens flares from real streetlights, the sharp white of headlights piercing through shadows. It feels gritty, grounded. The speed is less about spectacle and more about release. How fast can you go before the past catches up? One of the most hauntingly effective uses of setting comes in a scene where Noah walks through Camden Market at night. Shops are closed, lights are dim, and the camera doesn't follow her from the front. It trails her like a presence. The cobblestones echo. Graffiti-covered shutters loom. And all of it speaks to the film's deeper theme. The city remembers what you try to forget. The market isn't dangerous because of what happens there. It's dangerous because of what could happen. The tension in that space makes you hold your breath, even when nothing violent occurs. It's worth noting how deliberately light is used to shape these settings. Director of photography Lucia Navarro said in interviews that the lighting design was meant to trace emotion more than space. That's why some scenes are lit entirely with practical sources: lamps, headlights, neon signs. The glow is uneven, flickering. It keeps your eyes searching the frame. In intimate scenes between Nick and Noah, warm tones bathe the room, but shadows always linger near the edges. When they fight, the light shifts. Cooler, harsher, as if the room itself can't bear to look directly at what's breaking. And then there's the fog. Not just the literal fog, though there's plenty of that, curling through alleyways, hanging over bridges like breath, but the metaphorical kind. The way the camera focuses in on faces, leaving the world behind them blurred. The way windows are always streaked with condensation, obscuring what lies beyond. It's visual poetry, but it also says something about the characters. No one is seeing clearly. Every decision is made through a haze of memory, fear, and desire. Color grading plays a silent but vital role in creating this mood. The film never leans into saturated hues. Instead, it favors desaturated blues and grays, punctuated only occasionally by moments of warmth, an amber glow in a cafe, the flush of red tail lights across wet pavement. These moments feel like the city exhaling, just briefly, before holding its breath again. Critics praised this subtle palette, calling it emotionally intimate without ever becoming theatrical. The rooftop becomes a recurring symbol throughout the film. There are 3 major scenes that take place high above the city, each with its own emotional resonance. The first, early in the story, is a stolen moment between Nick and Noah. The city stretches behind them, glittering but distant. They kiss beneath neon and silence. It feels safe. But by the final rooftop scene, the confrontation with Claire, that same skyline feels cold, sharp, uncaring. The elevation doesn't offer perspective anymore. It offers isolation. This visual shift is achieved not just through location, but through the use of camera angles and depth. The first rooftop is shot with a shallow depth of field, focusing on faces, blurring the world beyond. The final one is shot wide, with deep focus. Everyone is small. The city looms large. The tension isn't just in the dialogue, it's in the scale. Perhaps the most emotionally loaded location, however, is not a rooftop or an alleyway, but a park. It only appears twice. Once when Noah walks alone, the leaves turning gold, the benches wet from rain. And again, much later, when she sits alone with Jesse, not speaking, just breathing. The space is open, unobstructed. Nature, simple and unadorned. It offers no resolution, but it offers stillness. In a film filled with speed and shadows, that stillness feels like grace. And then there's the apartment again. After everything, after revelations and broken trust, after Claire's secrets and the rooftop chaos, it's where Noah begins to pack her bags. The lighting is dim, but not cold. The city hums beyond the glass. She moves slowly, deliberately. No music cues. No voiceover. Just the sound of a suitcase zipper. And when she leaves, the camera doesn't follow her. It stays in the room. Watching. Waiting. The production design team deserves quiet applause for what they built across these spaces. Every texture, brick, metal, rain-soaked concrete, was chosen to reflect the tension between rawness and restraint. Props weren't selected for visual appeal, but for history. Scuffed tables, burnt-out candles, jackets left on chairs. These weren't sets. They were places that remembered the people who lived in them. Even the costumes played a subtle role in location-based storytelling. Noah's wardrobe shifts as she moves through the city, from layered softness in the apartment to bolder, more structured pieces as she drifts deeper into London's nightlife. Jesse's colors are always lived in, like he's part of the streets. Claire, in contrast, is always perfectly dressed, but slightly out of place, as if she belongs to another version of the city. And Nick? His color palette stays muted, but by the end, his clothing becomes looser, less calculated. As if the city has stripped him bare. The score, too, follows the city's cues. Composer Arjun Cole didn't write melodies first, he wrote spaces. Tracks built from ambient sound, woven with low frequencies and barely their rhythms that mimic heartbeat, breath, tension. One track, titled Concrete Lullaby, was composed using real recordings from London streets, processed through analog tape to create warmth. It plays in the scene where Noah finally leaves. It doesn't rise. It settles. Like dusk. In interviews, the director called London the third main character. And you feel that, not just because of where the scenes happen, but how they happen in those places. The city amplifies. It exposes. It waits. There's a reason the camera never lets you forget where you are. Even in the most intimate scenes, windows show blurred red buses. Train rumbles pass in the background. It's not escape. It's immersion. By the end of the film, you don't just know the city. You carry it. Its rooftops. Its shadows. Its silences. Because My Fault, London doesn't ask you to observe its setting. It dares you to get lost in it. And the deeper you go, the more you realize. The city didn't just shape the story. It wrote it. Some films are born from storyboards and spreadsheets, planned to the minute, framed to the millimeter, every moment rehearsed into perfection. But My Fault, London was never one of those films. It breathed. It shifted. It came to life not just through what was captured on camera, but through what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Behind the intensity, the aching silences, and the fierce romance that played out on screen, there was another story, told in night shoots, forgotten lines, and the unspoken bond that grew between a cast and crew working through fog, fatigue, and the fragile magic of telling something true. What began as a sequel was, for many, a return to something unfinished. L. Diaz and Thomas Roman had already lived inside Noah and Nick for one film, but this time the emotional weight was different. Deeper. More dangerous. And that shift spilled over into how they approached the set. From the very first table read, there was a quiet intensity. A knowing. Diaz later admitted that she didn't sleep the night before the shoot started. It wasn't nerves, she said. It was like I could already feel everything she was going to go through. That emotional energy translated into an unusually close-knit production. The set itself was minimal, often cold, often cramped, but the relationships that formed within it warmed every corner. The apartment used for Nick and Noah's shared space was a real flat, rented for the duration of the shoot, and it became more than a location. It was home base. Between takes, cast and crew would gather on the worn couch, sharing headphones, laughing over inside jokes that didn't make sense to anyone else. There was a coffee pot that no one claimed, always mysteriously full. A wall covered in sticky notes, some from the script, others with doodles or anonymous messages like, "Don't forget to breathe," or "She still loves him, even now." Thomas Roman was known for staying in character long after the scene had ended, especially during the darker moments of the shoot. After filming one of the rooftop sequences, where Nick confronts Claire and nearly breaks down, Roman walked off set without a word. He didn't speak to anyone for nearly an hour. Not out of arrogance, but necessity. "Sometimes," he said later, "you have to carry the silence a little longer." L, understanding this, left a cup of tea on his trailer step, along with a note that read simply, "You're not alone." He kept that note taped to his mirror for the rest of production. But it wasn't all heavy. In fact, some of the most surprising moments came when the tension lifted. Rami Javed, who played Jesse, quickly became the on-set wild card. Known for his improvisations, he had a knack for turning even the most serious scenes into something electric. During one take where Jesse is meant to deliver a cryptic warning to Noah, Javed instead broke into an impromptu poem, rhyming, ridiculous, but somehow still in character. The entire crew burst out laughing, including Diaz, whose genuine reaction was so perfect that they used a variation of it in the final cut. Jesse was always supposed to be unpredictable, the director later said. Turns out so was Rami. There was a running gag involving the rain machines, which were used extensively for several nighttime scenes. The machines worked beautifully, most of the time. But once, during a key emotional moment between Nick and Noah, just as Roman leaned in to deliver a devastating line, the rain machine sputtered and let out what can only be described as a comical spit. Everyone froze, then burst out laughing. Roman tried again, same thing. It took 4 tries and a complete system reset before they could get through the take. That malfunction ended up being nicknamed the Crying Sky Point. One of the biggest challenges came from the decision to shoot almost entirely on location. London, beautiful and atmospheric, was also unpredictable. Noise was a constant battle. In one scene, filmed under a bridge at midnight, just as Diaz whispered a crucial line into Roman's ear, a drunk passerby shouted from off-screen, "Just kiss her already!" The crew had to wait 10 minutes for the area to clear, and the audio team spent hours trying to scrub the voice from the recording. Still, those location shoots birthed some of the film's most iconic imagery. A foggy alleyway scene between Jesse and Noah, shot in the early morning when real fog unexpectedly rolled in, was not in the original schedule. The crew was wrapping for the night, but when they saw the mist crawling down the street, the director grabbed her camera and called the actors. No blocking. No lighting setup. Just the city, waiting. They filmed a 2-minute improvised scene in a single take. That scene became a visual motif throughout the film. You can see it, echoed in memory, again and again. There were late-night drives through London's backstreets, camera rigs strapped to the sides of cars, assistant directors riding in the trunk to monitor takes on tiny monitors. Once, during a chase sequence, the car carrying Roman and Diaz accidentally took a wrong turn and drove into an actual roundabout filled with morning commuters. Instead of cutting, the camera kept rolling. Roman stayed in character, muttering, "Well, we're definitely not in LA anymore." The footage made it into the film as part of a montage. It felt too real to leave out. Then there was the day they filmed the scene where Noah finally opens the drawer in Nick's office. The props department had filled the drawer with carefully curated items, photos, documents, relics of Nick's past. But just before filming, Diaz asked for a few minutes alone with the drawer. She replaced one of the staged notes with a handwritten letter she had written herself, Noah's version of closure. When she opened the drawer during the take, her reaction wasn't acting. It was her reading her own words back to herself. The letter never appears in the final cut, but its presence changed the scene. That's how the production operated, fluid, emotional, instinctual. The director, Ana Rivas, was known for running rehearsals more like therapy sessions. Before intense scenes, the actors would gather in a circle, lights dimmed, and speak, sometimes in character, sometimes not, about what the scene meant to them. Roman once said it felt less like making a movie and more like remembering one that had already happened. The cinematographer, Lucia Navarro, brought a painter's eye to every frame. She would spend hours waiting for natural light to hit a window just right. During one key scene in the apartment, where Noah sits alone in the morning light, Navarro insisted on shooting only between 7:42 and 8:08 a.m. for 3 days straight, chasing the perfect angle of sunlight. "We weren't filming a movie," she said. "We were capturing grief in motion." Even off-camera moments took on their own kind of myth. A street musician who played outside their set every day was eventually hired to perform live during one scene. His song, an improvised melody with no name, became part of the final soundtrack. The entire cast and crew chipped in to pay him. "He was like our guardian," Diaz said. "He kept the mood exactly where it needed to be." When it was time to wrap, no one really wanted to say goodbye. The final day of shooting took place in a park at dawn. Noah sits on a bench, alone. The city around her begins to wake. There was no dialogue, no blocking, just silence. One take. After the cut, Diaz stayed seated. Roman, off-screen, didn't approach. The crew let the camera run, not because they needed more footage, but because no one wanted to be the one to say it was over. The wrap party was held in the very same apartment where they had filmed. By then, it felt like a lived-in diary. There were handwritten notes stuck to the fridge, old receipts tucked into drawers, photos taken on Polaroids taped to the wall. Roman stood in the kitchen pouring drinks. Diaz danced barefoot in the hallway. Javed read a goodbye toast he wrote on the back of a napkin. It ended like the film did. Quiet. Bittersweet. Full of feeling. Because my fault. London wasn't just a film shot in a beautiful city. It was a story built by people who didn't just care about the script, they carried it. Scene by scene. Moment by moment. Until the line between fiction and memory became beautifully, irreversibly blurred. Some stories are driven by what's spoken, by the declarations of love and war, by the explosive betrayals and cathartic reconciliations. But My Fault, London is different. Its real story is written in the spaces between its dialogue, in glances that last a second too long, in hands that almost touch, in doors that close with finality instead of fury. Its themes don't arrive with a megaphone. They arrive like rain, quietly, steadily, soaking everything without asking permission. What seems like a love story on the surface unravels to reveal something far more intimate. This is a film about trust, transformation, memory, and the delicate art of letting go before something precious rots from the inside. At the heart of My Fault, London lies the persistent theme of emotional displacement, the disorientation that comes from trying to love someone in a world that no longer feels familiar. From the moment Noah steps off the plane and into a city filled with fog and steel and unresolved promises, the entire atmosphere speaks of being unmoored. London doesn't greet her with open arms. It watches her. The streets are unfamiliar. The sounds colder. The rhythm offbeat. But the most jarring thing of all isn't the place. It's Nick. This idea of not recognizing the one you love, not because they've changed but because you have, pulses through every scene between them. Nick is still Nick, brooding, protective, full of secrets, but the intimacy they once clung to now feels fragile. The city becomes a metaphor for this distance. Their apartment, once a potential sanctuary, becomes a physical representation of their emotional disconnection. The rooms echo more. The lighting dims. Conversations happen across thresholds instead of beside each other. The symbolism here is subtle but powerful. Doorways, in particular, are used repeatedly. Noah standing on one side, Nick on the other. Sometimes neither of them crosses. Sometimes only one does. But each time, the doorway is more than architecture. It's the space between knowing and doubting, between who they were and who they're becoming. Another layer of symbolism emerges in the city itself. London is presented as a living, breathing entity, one that remembers what the characters want to forget. And that's where the theme of memory and the inescapability of the past rises like mist over the Thames. Nick is haunted by the version of himself he left behind. Not because he's ashamed, but because it's still too close. Jesse, Claire, the underground, they're not just people. They're reflections. Mirrors held up to the man he swore he wasn't anymore. And every alleyway, every whispered name, forces him to confront the truth. You can't outrun what's still inside you. This inner reckoning is beautifully visualized in the recurring use of mirrors and reflective surfaces. Nick looks into mirrors multiple times throughout the film, but never with comfort. He doesn't see himself. Or maybe he sees too much. In one particularly loaded scene, he stares into a rain-specked window, his reflection distorted by water and light. That image, broken, shifting, incomplete, becomes a quiet thesis statement. Nick's not lying. He's fractured. For Noah, the weight of the past is different. She's not haunted by what she's done, but by what she can't unknow. Her evolution is centered around the theme of autonomy through clarity. She loves Nick deeply. But over the course of the film, she begins to understand that love isn't always redemptive. Sometimes it's distracting. Sometimes it clouds. And as the secrets peel back, first Claire's, then Jesse's, and finally Nick's, Noah doesn't break. She sharpens. The recurring image of glass, windows, water, broken picture frames, symbolizes this growing awareness. Glass separates, but it also clarifies. It distorts when you're too close. And as Noah pulls back, as she gains perspective, her choices become less reactionary and more deliberate. When she finally decides to walk away, it's not out of defeat. It's an act of reclamation. A refusal to lose herself in someone else's storm. There's another quieter theme woven into the film's fabric, grief as an inheritance. Claire isn't framed as a villain, not truly. Her rage is grief with no resolution. Her brother's death, and the ambiguous guilt Nick carries, becomes the axis around which everything spins. Claire doesn't want justice. She wants feeling. She wants someone to hurt the way she does. And that need drives her into a cycle of manipulation and vengeance that ultimately consumes her. But the film doesn't punish her. It mourns her. When she finally collapses beneath the weight of her own need, the camera lingers, not to vilify, but to witness.